Hi and welcome everybody to our xChange webinar discussing the Chinese New Year 2023 in light of our container logistics forecast. My name is Christian. I'm co-founder and CEO of Container xChange and super excited to moderate this webinar. Together here with us, we have Cathy Roberson, who is founder and president at Logistics Trend and Insights, and Mr. Sun, who is director and general manager at CNTRANS. Thank you so much for joining. Excited to have you here online, and thanks for taking the time to share your insights with us. Also, of course, welcome to all of you joining us from virtually from all over the world. Feel free to use the chat on the right-hand side in your Livestorm application to say who you are, where you're coming from, what company you're with, etc. And you will also be able to access the LinkedIn profiles of our panelists there in that chat. We will be waiting a couple of minutes for everybody to join, maybe another 1 or 2 minutes, and then we get started with the content straight away. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will then be shared with everyone after the event, so you can also replay if you didn't get something right in the event. Now, before we get started, and while you all type in there who you are and where you're from, so thanks a lot for the engagement already. We would also like to do a quick poll, which is also on the right-hand side in your Livestorm application. And there's 3 quick questions. We're sharing this here also on the screen. Number 1, we'd love to understand what the last year sort of brought to your business. How was your business impacted by, or was your business impacted by Chinese New Year 2022? Then looking at this year, do you think there will be COVID-related lockdowns around Chinese New Year 2023? Interesting question, of course, with sort of the high number of COVID cases in China right now. Seems that the government or the Communist Party is moving away from lockdowns a little bit, but keen to see how that plays out and what your opinion is. And of course, we'd love to understand or hear whether you have alternative shipping routes to move your containers from China during Chinese New Year. Is there anything that you're planning? Any tips or tricks? Anything that you're doing to evade any disruptions? Cool. I see the people counter still counting up a little bit, but I think we get started. For all of you who just joined us, welcome again one more time. We're going to talk about Chinese New Year 2023 and its impact on supply chains globally. In general, when Chinese New Year is approaching, we know that production slows or completely shuts down in China, and manufacturers are not able to accept new orders. Last year, 2022, Chinese New Year celebrations coincided with record container pileups at major Western ports. I'm sure many of us still remember the situation in the beginning of 2022. We had extremely high freight rates and, of course, other pandemic-related fallouts. This year, we have the added complexity of another wave of COVID, already leading to many factories and manufacturers to close earlier, pull the holidays forward from what we've seen in the press here, and hence sort of prolonging a little bit the downtime in China, so to speak. According to CNBC, factory orders are down between 30% and 40%, and already a quarter of the labor force is sort of off and cannot show normal production. But we also have to bear in mind the equipment surplus, very, very much contrary to last year, and still falling freight rates. And the question now is, of course, how will all these tie together and what will be the outcome? Let's maybe start with some context and, of course, also ask our panelists here, taking a quick look at what happened in 2022 before we then look at 2023, so this year. I will sort of document questions and answers here in our live whiteboard online, so that you can all follow quite easily. Maybe starting with you, Cathy. If you look at 2022, what were the main issues that most global companies faced due to Chinese New Year last year?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to also take it back to 2020 when the pandemic hit. We saw that first half of the year, demand for goods just plummet. It wasn't until halfway through the year that we began to see demand starting to pick up for inventory replenishments. Then it just kind of snowballed from there. And fast forward to December of 2021, okay? We're sitting here in the US, I should say, sitting here with over 100 ships outside the ports of LA and Long Beach, which make up about 50% of Asian imports into the US. Okay, lots of backup. So, ripple effects all the way down to our front doors, the last mile was occurring. Demand still high. From a consumer perspective, we were still spending. We were still hesitant in returning back to stores and such. I think that was when the vaccination started coming into play here, but we were still a little bit hesitant. So those backups just played into the Chinese New Year of 2022. Still a period of trying to unload those ships fast, from back in December, while the demand was still pretty high for the most part. And it just kept going. But that the Chinese New Year 2022, at the same time, we saw situations within China, drought conditions, the Yangtze River, where there's a lot of manufacturing there. Saw the 2022 Winter Olympics. There was a lot going on there. So that also played into exports coming out of the Asian ports into the US as well. Rates were still pretty high coming into the US. So it was just still a messy time, to put it nicely, here in the US.
Okay. Cool. And to you, Mr. Sun, how did, if you look at Chinese New Year in 2022, how did that have an impact on container availability in China and around the globe?
Hello, everyone. In my opinion, the container is oversupplied in the marketing in the past 2 years. However, the demand for SOC containers is decreasing greatly. Due to the Russia and Ukraine crisis, most of the top 10 shipping lines quit from the Russian market. The number of SOC containers from China to Russia has increased a lot by railway or by some small shipping lines. For China to Euro trade, it's decreased. Presume SOC containers will be in shortage in Europe market soon. While there will be huge overflow in Russian market. So the container won't be balanced currently. For SOC containers are used by ocean freight and railway transport. For now, there's no gap between SOC and the COC rate due to lower ocean rate. Hence, most of the ocean business are under COC container, a COC term instead of SOC. Meanwhile, the railway business to Europe declines significantly. Yeah, that's all.
Understand. And if you look at the situation last year, Cathy, how did Chinese New Year influence container prices and leasing rates? What was the impact that we saw there?
Well, here the rates were high. Okay, let's just put it at that. They were super high. But what was interesting was because of that backup that happened in late late 2021, the backups caused a lot of delays, particularly among the retailers. They were receiving their Christmas items sometime in February, if they were lucky, probably in March. Number of delays. And as a result, inventories backed up, and we saw a complete opposite of what we saw in 2020, when there were empty shelves, not enough inventory. Now in 2022, we saw too much inventory, and that played out throughout 2022 and still into this year. So as far as the Chinese New Year of 2022, it was just people trying to get their inventory in, and it almost, okay, in a weird way, kind of looked, it looked different than 2020. So I laugh and say we're looking at 3 different Chinese New Years: 2020, 2021, 2022, and this year. So it's all very much different. It's not what we've been accustomed to over the prior years, when there's always that demand leading up to Chinese New Year. We didn't quite see that demand leading up to Chinese New Year of 2022 because the demand was already sitting off the coast of the US.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, understand. And if you look at sort of container prices and leasing rates, do you have any view there or any opinion there? How did that change, or was that impacted in 2022?
I think you just kept seeing the spot rates going up. They didn't really peak until sometime after the new year, probably in the spring, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you start seeing spot rates going down because the retailers there was a lot of inventory from the retailer perspective, and some manufacturers. There was still the manufacturers' inventories. There was a little bit of a lag there. They were still growing at this point. But then the fear of recession, there was a fear of recession, but at the time we started seeing inflation here just increasing, and the demand for goods started leveling off. So as a result, the spot rates started going downhill, and so the contract, there was that gap between spot rates and contract rates. It's like, where do you go from here? Can you renegotiate your contracts? I understand some shippers were successful in renegotiating contracts, but for the most part, not. Still, there was that spot rate. You really wanted to play in that spot rate market because it was, on average, lower than most folks' contract rates.
Yeah, after Chinese New Year, you meant?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and if you maybe sort of last question about last year, and then we can sort of start focusing on this year. If you look at 2022, what were some of the strategies that helped stakeholders such as shippers, carriers, freight forwarders, etc., prepare for Chinese New Year, especially in light of you saying, hey, nothing was normal. We looked at 3 different Chinese New Years: 2020, 2021, 2022. What strategies helped? Who fared most?
I think what helped leading up to last year's New Year was the fact that and I know this is a focus more on ocean freight, but I think it helped that there was capacity coming back online for air freight. So there was a shift. We had folks chartering their own ships. We had folks chartering their own airplanes, and to get the goods moved into the US faster. That really was like a desperate attempt, to be honest with you. But what else can you do when shipping capacity was just maxed out and such as that? So there was a lot of the chartering going on. So that was it pretty much, because by the time the inventory hit the US soil, then there was a whole nother issue, internally, domestically, trying to get the goods further inland. But that's another story for another time. But
Yeah.
no, I think we saw a lot more chartering going on.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that's also what we see, sort of, or what we saw last year on xChange, that companies were really looking for more flexibility in their supply chains, meaning chartering their own vessels and then subsequently leasing their own equipment or buying equipment, container equipment, in order to move their goods, instead of purely relying on the big carriers.
Exactly. I mean, there's those options they needed, and Mr. Sun noted the rail system, between Asia and Europe. That was also really impacted a good bit as well. Almost overloaded at times, from what I understand. So, those options: air, ocean, rail, and then make possibly combinations. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And now, if we look at, so we move sort of to the second sort of component of this discussion, looking at Chinese New Year 2023, sort of just 10 days to go. If I ask you, Mr. Sun, what impacts will this Chinese New Year have on the manufacturing and port activities in China? And again, being only 10 days away, what impact have we already seen in volumes?
Yeah, maybe the fourth quarter is the peak season for the Chinese marketing for logistics. In particular, usually there's cargo rush in January and February, but this year the Chinese New Year is earlier in this year than before, and this situation may last until January 15th. However, there will be a peak infection in a short time, which is expected to have a great impact on the domestic supply chain after June 15th. The factories are closed, and the drivers and the workers return back to home to enjoy their holiday. So everything will be stopped during June 15th to February 5th. Yeah, and the market will not be recovered until February 6th. So combined with above, in my opinion, it's difficult for all of us to do our business. So the international logistics market won't go back to the past 2 years. Maybe the weak trend won't be changed in 2023. So every one of us should adapt to our business mode. Yeah. Firstly, most of domestic freight forwarders business are under CYCY or CY terminal term. So we should extend the service range of our logistics service. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. That's
If I may, the post Chinese New Year this year is going to be just a lot of question marks, with the whole lifting of the COVID zero, from China. It's like, how much manufacturing will come back online February 7th? How many people will be out sick with COVID? How many people will refuse to come back to work? And it's not only manufacturing, but it's also all the logistics players, the trucking, the warehouse workers, the port workers in China as well. So many question marks there, so many unknowns. And I think it's going to be kind of hard for a lot of businesses to gauge, how to replenish their inventories and such post Chinese New Year.
And there you're talking specifically about, for example, U.S. importers, or who?
Well, anybody
you
for
see
that
most
matter,
struggling with?
whether they're in Europe or the U.S. for that matter. I mean, here the demand for imports, usually you see this big sudden jump in spot rates in the ocean and air freight markets leading up to the Chinese New Year. I mean, that's historically been the case. Here, it's been crickets. I mean, you haven't seen any changes. Instead, all you saw was this increasing of blank sailings and such. So no demand. We just finished the holiday season, and a number of retailers are coming out that they have been successful in reducing their inventory levels. Big question is, how much did they order before the Chinese New Year?
Mm-hmm.
Or have they decided to wait until afterwards? So, like I said, it's a lot of unknowns. And again, when you have technology solutions, I think forecasting technology tools is so important in today's market. Well, it's always been important, but more so now. However, it's a little difficult after the past 2 years or so, with the pandemic, because that's really changed the dynamics and how we look at supply chains now.
Yes. And okay. And what's your view, Cathy, on whether and how Chinese New Year 2023 will affect the continuing fall in demand? What's your view there?
Honestly, I think it's, for here in the U.S., it's just really another day. I mean, I've not seen any impact whatsoever, leading up. But I do think, again, that question mark, when does manufacturing in Asia really return? I mean, yeah, it will open up in, February 6th for most manufacturers. However, how many people are going to be able to crank out orders? And then the other question again is, how much inventory replenishment is really needed here in the U.S. market? And right now, looking at government statistics, inventory levels still remain high. And we're also seeing sales kind of plateauing, if not dipping, because there are concerns. Economic outlook is, number of economists are saying we're heading into a recession. I don't know, but the inflation rate still remains pretty high.
Sorry, I'm just documenting here. Yeah, gotcha. And what do you think will be the impact on spot rates and subsequently also contract rates? So we've seen a significant fall, of course, especially Trans-Pacific spot rates have just plummeted. And now, of course, the discussion is around how would that impact? How would that turn out long term? And what will be the impact on contract rates?
It's going to be interesting to watch, because we are coming into contract season. In March, April, May, June period. So, I mean, how low can spot rates go? They are going down, that's for sure. So what incentives are these shipping lines going to be willing to give shippers to convince them that they want to go ahead and sign a contract now, as opposed to shippers playing the spot market, the spot rates? They may be wise. We may have already bottomed out with the spot rates. I'm not sure. But I would imagine come second half of this year, spot rates will likely start ticking back up, because that's when we're expected to see more demand for inventory replenishment from retailers, more demand for manufacturing inventory, and so on. And it may be wise for the shippers to, consider signing a contract before June, just in case, the spot rates do tick up. But yeah, it's, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting perspective. Yeah. I mean, the question, of course, will be, will we see a return to rate levels that are similar to pre-COVID, or will I don't know, have carriers learned their lesson and are able to sort of manage capacity better this year in order to keep rates a little bit elevated? Any view there? Any perspective there?
That's a very good point, Christian. They could very well keep capacity tight just to maintain those artificial rates higher. But I think shippers would ultimately rebel in one way or another on that and seek alternative solutions. I think we may, and this may be stretching it a bit, and I am an air freight person. I would like to see more demand, more use of air, but they could very well play them off on, from each other, comparing those rates. We may see the rise of air freight usage.
Yeah. I mean, I myself, or we as xChange, we're quite skeptical with regards to rate levels in 2023. I mean, ultimately, I don't think this time will be different. There's no structural reason why suddenly competition for demand will be less fierce in container shipping. And it's still an oligopoly. It's still sort of the very, very high level of fixed costs. So any container that a carrier can load onto their vessel, almost no matter the price, as long as the price covers the variable costs, which are quite low, is sort of a good container. So I think the likelihood of a rate war is very, very high in this year.
Yeah. I don't see anything like that going on. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And maybe sort of coming back a little bit to Chinese New Year, looking at you, Mr. Sun. How do you think the celebrations and, of course, the related travel activity, etc., will impact the COVID situation in China? And ultimately, do you anticipate any more lockdowns, or is that a thing of the past?
Okay, with the zero policy adjusted by Chinese government, everything is back to normal in China now. I think lockdown policy won't be happen in future. Although the number of the COVID-19 cases increasing every day in China now, most of the people could be recovered soon and back to normal work and normal life. So this situation is developing in a great direction in China now. Yeah.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And continuing there, like if I look at your company, CNTRANS, how do you plan for Chinese New Year 2023? And of course, how might we be able to support you?
Okay, because the marketing is very difficult for all of us, so we should think more and do difference compare with other freight forwarders. So we also should reduce the logistics cost via resource integration to provide a better solution to our clients. So we hope xChange can help us more information for us. Provide more marketing information of both containers and the freight forwarders. We can learn more about market trends and what will happen in the future. The second, I think xChange can provide better supply service for us to reduce our costs, and it will help us getting more business from our customers via your platform. Thirdly, digital logistics is very popular in the market. So I think you can EDI link with our website to achieve online booking and inquiry, or check our containers or shipments online. Yeah, that's all.
Gotcha. And I mean, 100% agree. I think this is something that that we're all working on, sort of ensuring that companies like yours can plug into our marketplace, find more information, use our data insights product, and then of course streamline operations through EDI and API integrations. So definitely on the roadmap. Looking forward to collaborating further on that. Do you, maybe sort of one last question then to Cathy before we get into our Q&A. We're now half an hour into the webinar, and I saw that there's quite a few questions sort of coming up in Q&A. So trying to keep this short and concise here. If I look at you, Cathy, what strategies would you suggest for other businesses to help them ensure visibility and reliability? Of course, during Chinese New Year, but also above and beyond, because of course, visibility, ability to plan and to forecast and to project is becoming more and more relevant. You mentioned it before. What are possible strategies there?
Oh my gosh, definitely. I agree. I mean, the more visibility you have in your supply chain, end to end. Oh gosh, I hate to say end to end, but I mean, it's true. The more visibility you have, the better. Data is so important. The right data, analyze it, use it to forecast. Forecasting is very, very important as well. Those technology investments are critical. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons learned during COVID was visibility is important, because if you remember beginning of the pandemic, it was like, oh my gosh, where are our suppliers? We know our tier one, but where's the second one, third one, so on. Did not have that complete visibility. Did not know where to go to order medical equipment and such as that. So again, choose your, there's a number of good technology companies out there. That visibility, the partnerships with your technology companies, along with your data, supply chain technology companies is very important. Work with them, collaborate with them, and understand the data that they're bringing to the table, and make sure that meets your needs. Actually, not only meets, but exceeds your needs, to be honest with you. But yeah, we're moving into more and more volatile times from a global perspective, and technology is critical for that, and that visibility. I can't emphasize that enough. From the first part of the supply chain all the way down to the final mile, or the reverse aspect of the supply chain.
I think I can only echo that. It's also one of the reasons why a lot of companies sign up to xChange. So when we interview them, what played a role in your decision process? A lot of the times, the answer is, yeah, we just need more visibility. We need more transparency around, I don't know, rates, equipment supply and demand, availabilities, etc., etc. And yeah, of course, we're proud to be able to help there once in a while, at least.
I think y'all do a good job. So.
I mean, also ultimately, that's also one of the reasons why we run these webinars, right? To give people more visibility and transparency, and maybe also some third-party opinions on where's the market heading, what can I do, how can I improve.
Exactly, that's all part of it. That sharing of knowledge is critical. And doing webinars, like you said, like it's important. I think it's part of all of this, like you said.
Awesome. Then let's move over to the Q&A. Thanks a lot to everybody who submitted a question. Let's see what we can answer here straight off the bat. If we don't have or if our panelists or I don't have an answer straight away, or if we don't manage to get through the questions, I will of course answer those afterwards, and then share them together with the recording and our notes here with the audience. So your question will definitely be answered and will not get lost. looking at the first question, SOC versus COC volume that was transported during 2022. I'm not sure, Cathy or Mr. Sun, whether one of you has an opinion straight off the bat there, or wants to come back later with an answer.
No, I'm afraid not. Not here.
Mr. Sun, anything you've seen in your business in terms of the volume split?
Yeah, in Europe trade, the SOC container is decreased, but in Russia area, the marketing is increasing. Yeah, this year. So SOC is oversupplied in the marketing. Yeah, so maybe in the future there will huge business around buying container or leasing container and so on. Yeah. So.
So you see sort of SOC availability coming up.
Yeah. So we can get more business opportunity around the container. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Then looking at the next question, in 2020, we saw that right after Chinese New Year, there was a huge surge in COVID cases. If the situation is improved in this year, will it help in restoring the global trade to some extent? I don't know, any takers for that question?
I could take a swing at that. No. There you go. Put it simply, no, not really sure. As far as restoring global trade back, I mean, does that mean back to prior 2019? And if that's the case, do we really want to go back to prior to 2020? I don't know. There's a lot of risk out there. There is COVID. There is the war between Russia and the Ukraine. There's a lot of geopolitical issues. The global supply chains are facing. I don't expect to see any type of a balance this year, possibly next year. I think, and I hate to use this phrase, and I apologize, but I really think we've entered into some kind of new normal type of situation. We're going to see a lot of volatility. I think that's the word here. I doubt there will be any type of a balance per se. Now, with that being said, I mean, there are no ships waiting to come into the U.S. West Coast ports. Looks like we don't have a lot of ships on the East Coast waiting to come in as well. So there is that balance, from a U.S. perspective, which is good. Looks like things are kind of sort of returning to normal from that perspective. But you start peeling back and you still say there's still issues inland, in the inland part of the U.S. So.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. Moving to the next one, it says, following the drastic drop in price both of containers in China and ocean freights, we've seen some factories increasing prices, maybe also in line with global inflation trends. Is this a likely continuing scenario, or the oversupply will maintain the prices down? I would assume sort of oversupply of shipping capacity. Will that keep prices down in light of our discussion before? Will rates go towards pre-COVID levels, or will they stay low? Any takers for that question?
That's an interesting question. I mean, does that also pertain to inflationary measures as well? I don't know. We see a lot of manufacturers here raising prices. Well, they've had to raise prices because raw material prices have increased. Imported raw materials have increased. So they've had to reciprocate to cover those costs.
Yeah.
And that will likely continue this year, or until inflation is tamed, which I'm not exactly sure when that will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I understood the question right. And I hope I understood also you right. And I tried to answer this also in light of our discussion previously about sort of freight rate trends.
Gotcha.
Next question. How do you see congestion acting out this year after Chinese New Year as compared to the previous 3 years? So congestion, port congestion, hinterland congestion, depot congestion. I guess within China, not so much around the globe. Mr. Sun, do you have an opinion here? How does maybe Chinese New Year and workers being off, but also the surge in COVID cases, how does that impact congestion in China?
Now everything is normal because the capacity is full in the marketing. So most of the shipping line will reduce their space or capacity in China after Chinese New Year. So I think after Chinese New Year, there will be short of cargo in the marketing. Yeah, so it's difficult. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I have some troubles here with my internet. I hope you can still hear me.
Well, this last question, there's an underlying labor crisis in China with the Chinese New Year approaching. Do you think there'll be any implications of this major ports? I don't know, Mr. Sun. That's a really interesting question. What do you think? I mean, do you see this labor issue impacting ports? Or is there a labor issue?
Sorry?
This question that's on the screen here, the labor issues in China and with the Chinese New Year approaching. This labor's going home to celebrate. Do you think post Chinese New Year there'll be issues at the major ports?
Okay, everything will be normal after Chinese New Year, yeah, because most of us all get COVID-19 in China. So after the holiday, everything will be normal, yeah.
That's good to hear. I'm sure there's a lot of shippers out there from the US, Europe, are probably breathing a sigh of relief over that because, you know, there's been so much unknown what will happen post Chinese New Year. And there's been also suggestions there could be potential backups at the US ports, you know, from delayed backups because of people not returning to the manufacturers' facilities in China, or there could be not enough workers at the Chinese ports and truck drivers and so on. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think they just scrolled up to the another question here. What will the strategy for ocean liners be after the Chinese New Year? Will there be, are you expecting more blank sailings, increased freight?
No.
No?
There will be more black sailing in China after Chinese New Year, and the rate will be decrease, will maintain to decrease after Chinese New Year. So maybe it will be recover after 15th February. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. You know, the blank sailings is interesting because I'm seeing more notices of more blank sailings going further. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. And then this last question here is this China-Europe container leasing business. Now, I'm not up on that one, so I'm going to let you, your thoughts. What do you think?
I think the volume through by SOC container, maybe the marketing will be continue to decrease, because both of railway and ocean freight, there's a weak marketing. So lower leasing rate and lower ocean freight will impact on the marketing. So the requirement of SOC in market will be decreased this year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Here's another one.
Thank you very much for attending the webinar today. If you have any questions, feel free to still add them in the chat. And as mentioned, we will forward you the answers later on. And if you want to get more up-to-date relevant market information, check our Insights product. I will send the link to the chat. As well, if you have more questions, how can Container Exchange help you in your business, get in touch with our team. I will also send both links in the chat. I also want to thank our speakers today, Cathy Morrow Roberson and Mr. Sun. Thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you.